So thank you today for joining me on this fabulous webinar, Employee Engagement Doesn't Have to Be a Mystery. I'm going to talk to you today about 7 facets of employee engagement, and then I'm going to give you 57 action items. So within those 7 categories of employee engagement, I'm going to give you 57 action items. Most of them are things that you can implement pretty easily. There may be a few in there that you might need a little bit of leadership approval or some budget to make happen, but for the most part, they're pretty easy to implement, not too terribly time consuming. And that's my goal, is to always give information that people can implement pretty quickly. So just to increase your viewing experience, I'd love for you to turn off everything you have in the background. If you have your Skype on, your instant message, your email, make sure that you get your phone turned off, close your door. This is a chance for you to learn. We're going to be together for an hour, and I want to just make sure that you get the most out of this hour that you possibly can. Also, sometimes with webinars like this, there's a really high chance that you might go, oh, I know that, or I knew that already. Oh, yeah, I knew that already. But I want you to get rid of those and just listen to the webinar with an open mind. Just try to eliminate that I know, because then you might miss something. And then also hang on till the end. I'm going to give you something that hopefully can help you implement some of the things that you learned today. So you're in the right place if you're a manager or supervisor, somebody who has the ability to sort of ensure your employees are engaged or influence their engagement. You're in the right place if you're a CEO, a leader of some sort, if you're in human resources, if you're any sort of influencer in your organization, or if you're a consultant who's out there influencing other organizations. You definitely are in the right place. Like I said, I'm going to give you a ton of ideas, things that you can do to implement or get engagement going in your organization. So before we do that, just wanted to tell you a little bit about me in case you don't know me. Some of you are on my webinars quite often, so you've heard this story before, but I'll share it again anyways. So way back when, I was a director of human resources for a nonprofit organization, and I found myself working with a bully. I worked with a guy who was just really rude. He was uber excessive, micromanaging everyone in the office. He made it very clear if he didn't like you. He treated everyone like they were extraordinarily incompetent. He yelled a lot. He was a bully. And I personally felt bullied as an individual, but as the director of HR, I also dealt with the bullying as an organization. So I experienced the turnover. I would hire someone to work in his department, and then they'd realize what kind of manager they'd have, and they'd turn around and leave. I dealt with a lot of counseling, people crying in my office looking for help. So, I could see what this person was doing to the organization. And so during that time, I started getting my master's degree at San Diego State, and I had a class called The Dark Side of Communication. And the class was about all things dark. We learned about domestic violence and stalking and, negative things that happen in human interactions, and I had to write a paper on something dark for this class. So I decided to write a paper on workplace bullying, or I decided to write a paper on this person that I worked with, and came across the phrase workplace bullying as I was writing that paper. And since that paper, I have just been obsessed with workplace bullying and trying to figure out how to stop it. And, so I've been doing that ever since, and I've written a book called Back Off. That book is for people who feel targeted by workplace bullies. I've also written a second book called Seeking Civility. That's my most recent book. That book is for leaders and managers, people who are, can influence an organization in solving workplace bullying. So all that said, what I've discovered over time as I've been doing this is that in order to solve workplace bullying, you have to create a positive workforce. You have to create an environment where I can't talk. You have to create an environment where people feel happy and healthy and safe and civil, and where they have good relationships. And so in becoming an expert in workplace bullying and how to solve workplace bullying, I've had to become an expert in building positive workplaces, and employee engagement certainly fits within there. So if you have employees who are engaged and they love their team and they love what they do, they're not going to be bullying. And so, I'm essentially an expert in all things opposite of workplace bullying, in addition to being an expert in bullying. And so that's where this webinar comes from on employee engagement. I've read just a ton of books, I've done a ton of research, read a ton of articles, and worked with a lot of clients on implementing a better work environment, and a lot of that has included employee engagement. So that's where I'm coming from with this. And since that time, I've had the opportunity to, be featured or cited as an expert in a ton of major news venues, and I've served a whole lot of clients, and here's some of those. I'm looking at this realizing I've had several universities and government agencies. So I've just experienced several organizations in a variety of industries, and so I have a lot to offer in terms of what works and how people function in organizations. So we're going to start the webinar off by just talking a little bit about what engagement even means, so that we're all on the same page, and then we'll spend 95% of the webinar going over those 7 facets and talking about some action items within each of those facets. So let's go ahead and jump right in. What is employee engagement? Well, Gallup, Gallup does a poll on employee engagement around the world every year. How they define employee engagement is being involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to work and the workplace. And somewhere along the line, they've used this phrase, a profound connection, and I just love that phrase. I think that really sums it up. And so you have to ask yourself, do your employees feel a profound connection to your workplace? Do they feel a profound connection to your customers? Do they feel a profound connection to their daily tasks and responsibilities? And it turns out most of the time the answer is no. So what Gallup has found recently is that 32% of employees worldwide are what they call actively engaged. And so that means that, there are 32% of the workforce all around the world who says that they essentially feel this profound connection to their workplace and their work and their customers. Gallup found that 51% of employees are disengaged, and what that means is they come to work, these employees are there, they're present, but they could really care less about the organization or what happens to it. They're there for a paycheck, essentially. And then Gallup also found that 18% of employees worldwide are actively disengaged. And they define that as somebody who is actively kind of working against the organization. So a disengaged employee is at work, they're working, they're pedaling along to improve the organization or help the organization meet its mission, but they could care less about what happens to the organization. They're the people who have no problem calling in sick or, not worrying too much about timelines and that kind of thing. Actively disengaged means that they're literally working against the organization. So an actively disengaged employee might be stealing a ream of paper every now and again to take home to use at home on their printer, or they might be talking negatively to customers, so an actively disengaged employee is doing something that's harming the organization. So here's just another stat from Gallup. They've been looking at engaged employees every year for quite a while, and as you can see, it really isn't getting all that much better. Essentially, this line is flat. It's getting a little bit better year after year, but not by much. And this is interesting because we've been talking about employee engagement in the world of human resources, which is my world, for quite a long time. There has been a ton of bestsellers on the topic of employee engagement, or best-selling books. There's a ton of research. So it's interesting that although there's all this information out there to help employers build engagement, employers obviously aren't paying attention to it, or the same number of employees are paying, or employers aren't paying attention to it year after year. So with all of that readily available information, I would think that the number would be going up every year, but it's just not. So how do I define employee engagement? Well, I like to use these words, that engagement is about an employee's mind, body, and soul. So let's talk about mind for a second. So there's a phrase called discretionary effort. Discretionary effort is essentially the idea that employees, minute by minute by minute, make a choice, minute by minute by minute, how engaged they want to be. So employees constantly are choosing how much effort they're going to put into something, and that's the discretionary effort. And the idea is that the more you focus on employee engagement, the more you focus on building a positive workplace, the more often employees will choose to put in more effort. And if you have a terrible workplace where people don't get along or where there's bullying or any of that, then people put in minimal discretionary effort. So, minute by minute, employees have the choice of how much effort they want to put in. Can they get away with doing the minimal, or did they choose to put in, their whole mind, body, and soul because they enjoy the work and they enjoy the organization and they enjoy the people they work with? So that's what mind is all about, the choice to be engaged. Body is essentially, the employee's physical state when they're at work. Are they giving you their all? Are they, if you're in an organization where people are putting in physical labor, are they giving you their all day, every day? If you're sitting at a desk, are you, using all of your physical power to put in all of your maximum effort all day, every day? And then I think soul is important to engagement too. Do your employees have a real connection to the work and to the customers and to the organization's mission? For me, for example, I run my own company. I'm focused on a topic that I'm obviously very passionate about. I had the fortunate opportunity to go through a terrible experience that has pushed me down a certain direction. I certainly put my soul into everything I do. Even something like this webinar, it means the world to me that you're here and you want to listen to what I have to say. And so my soul is in everything that I do. And, that's my own personal experience. But do your employees put their soul into everything that they're doing? And it doesn't have to be their baby, their creation. They don't have to be the founder of a company to give you their soul. So one thing we should talk about too is just the difference between job satisfaction and employee engagement, because they can be relatively similar. You can conduct a job satisfaction survey versus an employee engagement and survey. So those two kinds of surveys would offer different kinds of information. But just to make a comparison, someone who's satisfied in their job, they'll do their job well. They'll probably give you, make the choice to put in a pretty good effort day in and day out. Someone who is engaged is consistently going above and beyond. Someone who is satisfied in their job will feel like, yes, I can be successful in this job. So they're focused on themselves. Me, myself, am I satisfied in my job? What will make me successful in this job? Versus an employee who's engaged. Remember, engagement means that the employee feels a profound connection to the organization. So because of that profound connection, the question is about how can I myself be successful, but also how can the company be successful? How can our clients be successful? How can my teammates be successful? In terms of commitment, someone who's satisfied in their job, they're committed to the job. They're there. They show up. If they're not dying, they'll avoid calling in sick, and they'll come in even if they feel not that great. Versus an employee who is engaged, they feel, because of this profound connection, a mutual commitment that I am committed to the organization and the organization is committed to me. So there's this extended piece of commitment. And then, people who are satisfied in their jobs, they put in a solid effort. They're there, they're performing, but someone who's engaged is really, again, making the choice minute by minute to always put in maximum effort in order to make the organization better. So that is my little spiel on what employee engagement is. So before we jump into how to create employee engagement, I wanted to tell you where I'm coming from with this webinar. So as a consultant who works with HR professionals, what happens to me a lot is that an HR professional will call and we'll chat, and they are really interested in having me come in and helping them solve the problem of workplace bullying. And then the HR professional will make a presentation to their CEO about how, hey, I found someone who's going to solve this problem. And the CEO says, no, I'm not interested in doing an entire anti-bullying initiative. And so because CEOs don't often see the value of creating a better work environment, CEOs often don't see the value of a certain kind of culture. They don't see the value in putting money into something like employee engagement because it feels fluffy to them. CEOs are about dollars and cents, and something like employee engagement doesn't feel attached to dollars and cents, even though it is. What I've gotten good at is being sort of an HR ninja. So I've gotten really good at helping HR professionals implement action items that make a difference in their organization, but that don't require the CEO's approval or any budget. And so that's what I tried to do with this webinar is, these action items I'm going to give you, as I said, most of them are things that really you could implement right after the webinar. They're not going to take a ton of time and effort. Most of these are not going to cost, a ton of dollars. So I'm trying to help you implement employee engagement, even if your CEO isn't, super excited about spending time on employee engagement. So I wanted to kind of put that out there. So in learning all about employee engagement and trying to understand the opposite of workplace bullying, what I've discovered is no matter what book you read about employee engagement, or no matter what articles you read about employee engagement, you definitely will always find these 7 pieces are about employee engagement. So you'll always see these 7 facets of employee engagement in everything, in any article about employee engagement, in any book about employee engagement. And so I wanted to take you through these. So what I'm going to do is go through and define each one of these 7 facets. I'm going to share a story or an example about that facet at work, and then I'll give you about 7 to 9 action items within each facet so that we can go through one by one, and in the end you'll have a ton of action items within each facet. All right, so let's start with employees feeling valued. So employees feeling valued is all about employees understanding how their role is important to the organization. It's about feeling like when they speak, they're heard, that their ideas matter, that whatever the organization's mission is, the employee feels like they're making a contribution to the greater good, and that they feel appreciated. So we all have to feel like people care about us and people appreciate what we bring to the table, and that includes your employees. So I wanted to share a story with you about this whole concept with you. This is a personal story. So when I was the director of HR for this organization where the bully was, we had file clerks. And so what happened is when I started working there, we didn't have a ton of clients. We only had 9 employees, and we had people who referred us business, and we had gotten some pretty good referral sources, and all of a sudden we grew quite a bit. So over a year or so, we all of a sudden had 40 employees, and we had a crazy number of clients. We just grew like crazy, and we had shelves and shelves and shelves of employee files. This was before electronic files. This was quite a while ago. And so and nobody could keep up with the filing. The customer service reps who used to, they'd work in a client file and then they'd have the time to go and file the file or file the paperwork, they just didn't have time to do that anymore. So there was a high school down the street. And so I went down to the high school and asked if they had a few students that wanted to come over and work with us at the end of the school day. So once school got out, they'd walk over to our office, and there were 4 of them, and they would just spend that few hours between 3 and 5:30 or something filing for minimum wage. And basically, when we hired these file clerks, what I did in training them was I basically just said, here are our files. Here's the table that has all of the client stuff on it that needs to be filed. Find the file number, find the file on the shelf, and stick the paper in the file. That's it. That's your job. And I was naive back then and didn't understand that this was going to work against me, this kind of training that I did. I didn't understand that the employees needed to feel valued, right? So what happened is after a few weeks of these file clerks working with us, client paperwork started to go missing. So a client would call in, speak to a customer service rep, and the rep would say, well, let me go find your file. And then they'd go to the file cabinet or these shelves and try to find the file, and they couldn't. Or they couldn't find the paperwork that the client was saying they'd sent in. So things were going missing. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. Well, a few days into this debacle, we're all stressing out what's happening to the client stuff. One person opened a client file and saw a giant pile of paperwork inside this file that didn't belong there. So what was happening was one of the file clerks, in an effort to reduce her work or these files or the filing project, she would just take a giant stack of papers, open a random file, and stick them in there. And that was my mistake. I did not explain to these file clerks how important their job was, and I didn't do that because at the time I didn't think about it. I didn't know that their job was important. But it turns out that filing is important to our customer service, and without customers, we don't have a business. And so once this happened, it was like a lightning bolt hit me, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is a really important job. And all of a sudden, we were paying them more than minimum wage. We were ensuring that they were happy and engaged, because although filing seems like a not so important job that, hey, just a high school student can do it, it turns out that it really was important to our ability to provide excellent customer service and have customers feel safe with us. And so, that was my mistake. So we needed to help connect the mission and their job for them. And, so this is an example of why feeling valued is so important. So let me give you some action items here. One action item that you could do in this area is to look employees in the eye and say thank you every now and again. We often get so busy that we forget to say thank you. Now, one thing I'll say about this is just the last 2 days I've been in Texas. I was doing training for a set of community colleges there, and the guy who set up the whole thing, who's been working with me all this time and had arranged all of these training programs to take place over these 2 days, he had told me in the car, I think it just kind of came out, but as we were driving around, he told me that he was a little upset that his boss actually never said thank you or good job or anything, and this was kind of a real big project for him. And it was really sort of bothering him that his boss had never bothered to say, hey, Jim, you did a great job. This is good. There were a lot of moving parts and you did a good job. And so just an example, he just wanted her to say thank you. He doesn't need a trophy. He just wants a thank you. Something else you could do is start staff meetings off with thank yous. So I don't know if you've ever tried this before, but if you have, you know why I'm suggesting this. If you start a meeting off just by saying, let's start this meeting off by letting people say thank you. Who wants to go first? That's what you say. Let's start our meeting off with thank you. Who wants to go first? At first, people will feel a little uncomfortable. They're not really going to be sure what you're asking. But eventually, someone will speak up and they'll say, well, okay, I'll go. You know what? Irma, you're always in a really great mood and I enjoy working with you. So thank you for being there. And then someone else will say, okay, well, I'll go. Yesterday I had a tough call with a customer and John stepped in and it was really helpful. So thank you, John. And it just really changes the tone of the meeting. And a lot of times I know supervisors or managers will start meetings off by saying, I want to say thank you to a certain employee. And that's nice, but let everybody in the staff meeting say thank you to each other. It just changes the dynamic. Another action item, you could cover a wall with paper just so that employees can write on the paper and they can sort of have a wall of successes. You don't have to have expensive plaques, all around the office with Employee of the Month. You can just buy some butcher paper, or some cheap wrapping paper and tape it to the wall with the wrapping paper or the fun side to the back so that it's white and people can write in things for each other and acknowledge each other. Another action item, in one way to show employees you value them is to take on a task that they hate doing. So if you have an employee who does have to file or has to create some terrible time-consuming report or has to do some sort of terrible thing, and we all have to do those in our job, but that might be a way to reward them and show them you care and that you're willing to sort of get down in the trenches with them. So that could be a reward, is that, hey, for an hour tomorrow, I'll take on that one task and do it for you. Another action item, if an employee has an idea, actually listen to it and talk to them about it. So I'll share that I had a boss that really exemplified this. So you could go to his office and say, I have an idea and I want to talk with you about it. And he would give you one of 3 answers. After your conversation, he would say, that sounds like a great idea, go and implement it. Or he might say, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. Could you do a little more research on it? Or could you find a couple other vendors and so that we can compare and contrast? Or the third answer was, you know what, I'm not sure that that idea will work and here's why. So no, we can't do the idea. But the thing was that even if he told you no, we're not going to implement your idea, he told you why, and he would have a conversation with you about the, what was wrong with the idea or why it wouldn't work, so that you didn't feel like he was just ignoring you. I see a question. Am I going to send out this slide deck? I am going to send out the recording, and I will do that a little bit later today. The slide deck, I'm not so sure if I'll send out or not. If everybody feels like that would be helpful for them, I can certainly do that. I guess I would ask that you email me personally, and then I can send it to you, as opposed to sending it out to the masses. Amanda, if that answers your question. Another action item is just to encourage autonomy. If you're the leader of your organization, you should be ensuring that managers and supervisors are not micromanaging people. Ensure that everybody feels comfortable to make decisions and that they feel empowered to do the things that help them feel autonomous. Nobody thrives in micromanaging. Another action item, discuss often how employees are contributing to the mission, goals, and bottom line. So going back to that file clerk, again, it would have been really important for me, and what I should have done when I hired those file clerks is to have that conversation. Do you understand why this is important? Let me walk you through what our clients are going through. The file clerks needed to understand why they were important and where they fit in the grand scheme of things, and what puzzle piece they played, what role they played in our organization and our customer service. And so don't assume that employees know that, and actually start with yourself. Do you know personally how you yourself contribute to the organization's mission, goals, and bottom line? And start with you, and then once you understand that for yourself, you can start talking to your employees about it. And one final action item under this umbrella of feeling valued is to ensure that your onboarding program includes the company history. So one way to help employees understand why they're so important is to share with them, here's where we started, here's what we've been through over time as a company, and here's how you fit in now. Here's the role you play in our history. And a lot of companies really just don't talk about history at all in their onboarding program, and that's a huge mistake. One example of one great example, Airbnb. The founders of Airbnb actually still have the apartment where their idea was born, and they've left it the same. So it's set up sort of like it's just never been changed. So when they hire in new employees, the founders of Airbnb actually take those employees to the apartment and share the history of how this idea was conceived and how things unfolded while they're right there in that right in the apartment. So as they're having that conversation, they can highlight for the employee, here's where you play a role in this history and why you're important to this company that we've created. How impactful is that to somebody's engagement, that their leaders have taken the time to really share and explain the history of the organization? Okay, so back to our 7 items here. The next item we're going to talk about is the work. So I wanted to, so work is about autonomy, flexibility, satisfaction, feeling that they'll be able to grow. We all want to feel challenged at work, knowing that our tasks are connected to something bigger. So knowing that this menial task that I hate doing is actually important because it's connected to something bigger than myself. I want to give you an example of this at work. So I did a training for an organization that actually was set up to kill mosquitoes. So this particular community had a real problem with mosquitoes because of the climate there and the rain and the environment. And because of West Nile virus and that fear, the city council voted to spend some city money to create a city government agency whose job was to go after these mosquitoes and solve this problem. And so I did some training for them actually on workplace bullying. And during the lunch hour, I was just kind of hanging around with the employees, eating and chatting with them. And I turned to this employee next to me and I said, so tell me a little bit more about what you do here. I know you kill mosquitoes and I get that, but tell me more. And she says, nope, that's what we do. You have it. We kill mosquitoes. And the guy across the table from us interrupts and he said, is that all you think we do here, kill mosquitoes? That's not what we're doing here. We are saving this community from West Nile virus. And just the way he said it and his eyes got big, and it's just that conversation was a real reminder of how important engagement is. So this woman who thinks she's just at work killing mosquitoes, she's probably not very engaged. She might be satisfied in her job, but probably not very engaged, versus this gentleman who says we're saving the community from West Nile virus. He's on a mission for the greater good of his community, and I guarantee you he was a lot more engaged than this woman. So let's talk about the work. What are some ideas here? Well, one, you could ensure there's some work-life balance by doing things like this idea, requiring lights be turned off by 5 p.m. If you can't do that Monday through Friday, at least do it on Fridays so it becomes a rule. Nobody can work past 5 on a Friday. Another example of something you could do here is to have dinner delivered. So if people are working past 6 or 6:30 pretty regularly, Monday through Thursday, have dinner brought in for them to show them that I acknowledge that you're here working hard for the organization and I'm going to provide you with the nutrition. You're here in dinner hour. You could reward employees with a half day off. So, obviously everybody loves to be told, hey, you can go home early. So it's a cheap reward, one way to show employees that you value them and the work that they're doing. Another idea is to take company field trips to different things that are related to your organization. So if your organization is serving customers, maybe you could take a field trip to where your customers are. Maybe you could take a field trip to one of your biggest customers, go to their office so that people can interact with the customers on a much higher level. So a lot of times in organizations, the sales rep is speaking to whoever is purchasing from you on the other side, and that's about the extent of the relationship. But why not take the whole organization or parts of your organization out into the world to really experience what your customers experience, or see your customers and meet them and talk to them, so that the work becomes much more meaningful. Another action item is to offer the opportunity to work from home. So you can see a lot of these ideas are really about work-life balance, that people feel that the work they do is important, but that they're also valued as a person and an individual. Always ensure that employees are focused on the mission. So anything you do, performance management programs, performance evaluations, coaching conversations, staff meetings, everything you do should always be connected to your organization's mission. Your mission statement serves as the blinking sign in the future that you're supposed to be headed towards. And a lot of organizations forget that. They create a mission and they create values and then they forget about them and they don't focus on them anymore. Everybody needs to always be focused on the mission 100% of the time. And so you've got to ensure that employees understand that. Another action item is to create stretch goals. So, the work is about challenging employees. People don't function well when they have to do the same thing all day, every day. They need to feel challenged, and you can do that by creating a stretch goal. And these are easy. So for example, if you're in a call center and you have people who are supposed to make 100 cold calls a week, create a stretch goal and say, this week, let's see if we can do 110 or 120 cold calls. And so just add a little bit to whatever their goal already is and see if people can reach them. There's actually a great clip from a movie. I can't remember the title of the movie off the top of my head. I'll have to locate it and put it out there in an email. But this, it's a football coach who's trying to convince his quarterback that the quarterback has more in him than what the quarterback thinks he has. And so the scene is the coach says, get down on all fours, I'm going to blindfold you. And then he calls one of the other heavier football players and says, get on top of him. And so the coach makes this quarterback crawl across the football field with this other football player on top of him. And the coach says, I just want you to go to halfway, go to the 50-yard line. And he's, and he's blindfolded, so the kid doesn't know how far he's gone. And the kid starts saying, I can't do it, I can't do it. And the coach says, yes, you can. Facing the Giants. Thank you, Jennifer. And the coach says, you can do it, you can do it. And this kid keeps saying, no, I can't, no, I can't. And in the end, when it's over, he says, you made it, and the kid collapses and he takes his blindfold off and realizes he's actually gone across the entire football field. It really is a great scene. Jennifer's with me on this. She's excited that I'm talking about it. It is a great scene, and it definitely makes me think about what kind of leader I want to be. I want to be a leader like that who inspires someone to reach new heights. And that's what stretch goals are about. It's about, so now this quarterback, this kid in this movie, he's going to always push himself a little bit farther because the coach showed him that he could do that. He could get a lot farther than he initially thought. The last action item here is to be careful who you acknowledge as corporate heroes. So this one's more of a warning. One thing I'll say is that if, for example, one of your core values is customer service, but somebody doesn't really exemplify that, doesn't provide good internal customer service or even good external customer service, then that person should never be getting promoted or rewarded or acknowledged until they prove that they can live this value of customer service. Or if you're telling your organizational members that you're celebrating work-life balance and that that's something that your organization offers, we're all about work-life balance. The person who works 90 hours a week, they don't get promoted because they're not emulating this message of work-life balance. So just want to put that out there, that as you think of people for promotions or offering people raises or giving them some sort of acknowledgement or making them employee of the month or whatever it is, it might be great that they've accomplished something, but they have to have accomplished it within your values and the culture you want to create, or they shouldn't be acknowledged. Otherwise, people start to realize it's not about the culture that you're saying it is. All right, so the next item here is team. Let's talk about teamwork and relationships as it relates to employee engagement. So this is really just about, trusting each other, that people feel like they're in a team, that the communication works well, that they get both positive and constructive feedback pretty regularly, that the group makes good decisions all together. So people need to feel like their team is functioning well and that they have good relationships with each other. So one example of this at work is the Hawthorne studies, which you may have heard about before. The Hawthorne studies are infamous studies. They took place in the 1920s, and what happened was some researchers who they wanted to understand how to increase employee production ultimately is what they were looking at. And so they conducted this study at the Hawthorne plant for the Western Electric Company, which is why it's called the Hawthorne studies. So what these researchers did was they suspected that things like a certain light would create production, or that a certain temperature in the room would increase production. And so they were really looking at environmental factors. And what they meant to do was, for example, put the air conditioning so that the room was 79 degrees, and then it was 69 degrees, and then it was 59 degrees, and they wanted to see what makes people more productive, if it's hotter or cooler or right in the middle. How dim or how light should it be in here? So they were adjusting, how dark or lit the room was to try to see if that increased or decreased production. And of course, they interviewed employees as part of this process, trying to understand how to increase production. And interestingly enough, nobody talked about the lighting. Nobody talked about the temperature of the room. What people talked about was their relationships with their peers and their managers. And it's kind of a funny study now when you think about it, but back then this was kind of very shocking, surprising information to discover, that people don't care about the temperature of the room. What they care about is the people they work with, and that's what inspires productivity, and later what we're calling now engagement. And so, they also figured out that although financial motives are important to people, that's really what they don't care about so much as people. So what would increase productivity is the people in the team and the relationship. So ever since that study, this has been, a focus of our research and literature on employees and employee engagement and productivity. So some action items you could do around here: train everyone on giving feedback, and train managers on how to coach. So one thing I've learned as I've gone through the world being a consultant with all of these different organizations is that people just don't know how to give feedback, and they need to. We all have to give feedback all the time. And also, managers are not good coaches, and just because someone's promoted to manager, it doesn't mean they're a coach. So managers need to be trained on how to coach performance and how to coach behavior. One thing you could do to ensure that you yourself are always giving positive feedback is to schedule time to do it. It's easy to just have that go by the wayside and you never do it. So maybe on your calendar every Friday, schedule an hour to make sure that you're sending out emails or going to people personally or writing your thank you cards. Give yourself some time on your schedule to make sure that you don't forget this piece. Another thing you could do is conduct what I call a relationship audit. And really what that means is you could just ask questions of people about their relationships. And you can do this in a survey. You could do it, as you're kind of meandering through the halls and getting to know people. You could do it in formal interviews or focus groups, whatever suits your purpose. But just asking people questions like, hey, what's your relationship like with your manager? Or, hey, do you feel like people give you positive feedback? I'm just curious, and just start to gauge how people feel about the team and the relationships with the people they work with. Another way to build teamwork is to engage in teamwork-related sorts of projects outside of work. So doing something like volunteering for Habitat for Humanity, or maybe do team bowling, have a bowling league, or something. Doing things outside of work that inspire teamwork, and certainly doing projects inside of work that inspire teamwork and relationships. But doing them outside of work is equally as important. Another way to ensure that your team is full of trust is to really just be transparent. So if you're the leader of a team or a supervisor or a manager, be transparent. And another thing I've learned along the way about managers is that they often feel like they have all of this information that they can't share. And I have learned that managers have a lot of information they can and should share. Certainly there are things that are private and confidential, but managers often are holding on to way more information than they should be holding on to. Be transparent. Talk openly about your company, where it's at, what's happening, whether or not you're meeting goals. Talk about it openly and freely. Something else you could do is have a show and tell meeting. So do you remember in elementary school where you would, stand in front of the room and say, here's my stuffed bunny, this is important to me because, and then some other kid would stand up and say, here's a picture that I painted or something my grandmother gave me. You could do that at work. Emulate that at work. So people can stand up and talk about what they've accomplished, what they're proud of. They could show and tell personal things or work-related things. You know, give people a chance to sort of celebrate themselves and share with the organization things about themselves personally and or things about, you know, what they've accomplished there in your workplace. So emulate the show and tell from elementary school. Do that at your workplace. Another action item is to just think crazy when you're designing your onboarding program. So, you know, onboarding is often this very scheduled, agenda-focused thing, which it should be, absolutely, but also think a little bit outside of the box. Do something a little crazy. For example, one IT firm, when they have a new employee, at the end of the week, at the end of this employee's first week, they will all go into the cafeteria, pop a bottle of champagne, and the entire organization does a choreographed dance, like a flash mob dance, for the new employee. How cool is that? That will definitely build some relationships and some teamwork. This person's going to feel absolutely included and celebrated because you've done something like that. Now, maybe your organization's culture isn't quite that, you know, kind of crazy where you feel that might be uncomfortable for you. But think of something. Do something interesting or crazy with your onboarding, something that will show this new person that you're excited to have them there. Another action item here, the last action item, is just, you know, get to know your employees. The way people start building trust and relationships is by learning from each other, knowing about each other. If employees know what they have in common, they're going to build stronger relationships. So encourage that. All right, let's talk about the environment. So the environment is all about just the culture, you know, what's it like there at the organization, what's the workspace like. For example, if your organization is made up of gray cubicles and gray walls, probably not very engaging. If your organization is made up of bright colors and interesting furniture, definitely a lot more engaging. So the paint on the walls literally plays a role in how engaged your employees are. So one story about this is I do videos for lynda.com, and Lynda, they create training videos. They're in Santa Barbara, and I get to go up there every so often and create the, you know, I write these video scripts for my trainings, and I go up there and we film them, and you do it with a green screen. And they have a great work environment. So, Deb says I'm cutting out. Deb, can you hear me okay? Did it come back? I'm not sure why I'm cutting out. Can you hear me okay? Okay, Candace says she can hear fine. All right, so we good, Deb? Okay, perfect. So Lynda's environment is really awesome. They, you know, everybody is so friendly. I love going there. As you walk through the halls, everybody clearly knows everybody else. So you'll be walking through the halls with your team or your whoever you're working with, and they all say hi to each other. They all know each other. As you walk from, you know, one building to another, they're all saying hi to each other. It's just, you can really feel that people like working there. And one thing I've noticed too is their cafeteria is actually open all day, and they only have healthy food. You know, it's not fried chicken, it's healthy food. But what they do is they serve breakfast, and then they serve a snack between breakfast and lunch, and then they serve lunch, and then they serve a snack between lunch and dinner. And then, you know, by then people go home and eat their own dinners at home. But what's interesting about this is that a lot of organizations would have a problem with food being open all day like that, or essentially that people could take lunch whenever they wanted. And what's neat about the cafeteria is all of the tables seat maybe 12 people. There are no single tables. There are no tables of two. So when you're in there eating lunch, you have to sit with your coworkers. And when I'm there at lunch at Lynda, you know, you just get to know all of these other people. So I'm working with a set of maybe 5 people as we're filming our video, but there's all these other people I get to meet, and they're genuinely interested in you and what you're doing there and what your course is about. And it's really a great environment, and I think it honestly has a lot to do with that cafeteria. People have the opportunity to collide and get to know each other. So let's talk about some action items there for your work environment. One is to redecorate. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go get a line item budget for $10,000 or $30,000 so you can redecorate the entire office. What it does mean is if you have gray walls, you might want to go to Home Depot and buy a bright color of paint, you know, for 20 bucks or 12 bucks or whatever it is, and spend a Saturday afternoon painting the wall. Another option is to give everyone a $10 gift certificate to the dollar store and let them go to the dollar store and buy whatever they want and decorate their cubicles with their dollar store items and just to have fun with it. Another idea is to have a contest for cubicle decorations and get people to kind of go crazy and decorate their cubicles, you know, really out there, and have a contest for maybe the weirdest cubicle or the coolest cubicle or the, you know, the best one, or a vote or something. So there's a lot of ways you can redecorate without spending millions of dollars. So, you know, if you look around your office and you feel like it's fairly boring, I absolutely recommend that you make a change. It can't be gray. You can't have engaged employees in a sea of gray cubicles. You just can't. Something else you might do is, if maybe you don't have the kind of environment where you can have a cafeteria like Linda does, but maybe there's a coffee house down the street, maybe there's a restaurant, you know, down below in your office building or something that you could offer people gift certificates to so that they can kind of incorporate that as part of your workspace. So if everyone has a $10 gift certificate that they get every month for the coffee house down the street, maybe they could go have a meeting there at the coffee house as a way to get out of the office, experience a different environment, and, you know, feel a little bit more casual and a little bit easier to get to know each other. And really what this is about is creating opportunities for people to collide, and I think that's a great word. It really gets at what I'm trying to say here. Organizations like Linda that have a cafeteria like what they have, the reason that's so important to their culture is Linda is saying, we want you to get to know each other and we want you to be friends, because you're going to work harder when people are your friends. If I don't like my team members, and if I don't care about my work environment, and if I'm not engaged, I'm not going to work that hard, you know, because I don't care what people think. But if these people are my friends and I truly value them and I feel like they value me, I'm going to work harder. I'm naturally going to be more engaged because I care about the people I work with. So, you know, it used to be in the 70s and 80s and 90s that we had these very strict offices and you have your cubicles and everybody sort of stays in their own section. Not so anymore. That's really just a thing of the past. So figure out a way to create an opportunity for people to collide. If you have an extra office that's not being used right now, or a section of your office that excuse me, where that's, you know, kind of open, put some beanbag chairs in there and call it a day. You know, you've just got to create a place where people can hang out, because they're going to work hard if they have the opportunity to hang out with each other. Something else you could do is, if your local newspaper or your local HR chapter does any sort of best place to work, I would definitely, you know, go interview them and find out what they're doing to earn that award so that you can get some best practices from them. Another great action item is to, everybody's got a cell phone. Ask your employees to each take their cell phone, create a 20-second video about your corporate values or how they live those corporate values. You upload all of those to YouTube. YouTube makes it easy to push them all together into one video. And Viola, you've got a video from your employees about what it's like to work at your organization, and now you can celebrate your environment. You can put that in your recruiting posts when you're hiring new people. You can put it out there on your website. You can put it on your blog. So you can use it for a lot of things. It's a great way to just get people thinking about how they live the values. Another action item, hold open discussions about positive workplace behaviors regularly. So for example, in your staff meetings, maybe an agenda item should be a conversation about professionalism and what that means in your workplace. Then maybe at the next staff meeting, the conversation is about work-life balance and what that means. And then at the next staff meeting, you talk a little bit about how to give I don't know, how to give feedback, or how to engage in customer service or something, so that there's just this constant conversation about positive workplace behaviors and what they look like in your organization. Also, you could create a culture committee. So if your culture is something you want to get a hold of and make it more clear and defined, and you want to really drive a certain kind of culture, you need a culture committee. The committee can be made up of people from all different facets of your organization, and use that committee to help you figure out how to drive a certain kind of culture. You don't have to do it yourself. And then finally, one thing I see all the time is, organizations have these values. They were created by a board of directors or an executive team, and then they're on the website, and that's it. That's all anybody ever does with them, and they don't resonate with the employees. If that sounds like you and your organization, then revamp them, start over. And values don't have to be these super corporate sounding things. So for example, a lot of organizations have innovation as one of their values. Well, that word is, outplayed. Everybody uses that word, innovation. If that's one of your values, no, that word doesn't resonate with your employees. I can promise you that. So could you come up with a different way to word this in a way that resonates with employees? So for example, Method is the soap company. They're in Target. They create the teardrop soaps. Their value for innovation is, what would MacGyver do? So they want people to live like MacGyver. And if you remember MacGyver, he was on in the 80s, and he could create anything, a bomb out of a piece of gum and a shoestring. And so that's what they're getting at. That is going to resonate with people much more than just the word innovation. So I encourage you to look at your values. Now, that's an action item you will need your CEO's approval for, but it's not an expensive action item. Jennifer says they just remade that. All right, that's interesting. I don't know if it'll be the same without the mullet, though. I don't know if you can repeat MacGyver without a mullet. All right, let's talk about, I can still use the example. Awesome, thanks. So let's talk about leadership. Leadership is just really about, do your employees trust the leaders? Do your employees feel like the leaders have their best interests at heart? Do the employees feel like leaders are making the right decisions for the organization? We have to have a good relationship with the people who are leading us into battles in order to be engaged in what we're doing. So I have an interesting story about bagels for you. And I sent this out in an email blast, so if you get those, you might have heard this before. This actually happened to my husband. So my husband got a new job in an organization, and a couple weeks into it, he comes home on a Friday and he says, hey, the HR manager said she's going to start doing Bagel Mondays. That's kind of cool. Nothing major, but it's kind of nice to have Bagel Mondays. Who doesn't want Bagel Mondays? And so on Monday, he doesn't eat a breakfast because he's assuming there'll be a bagel there waiting for him. And he gets to work and there are no bagels. And there never have been. And nobody's ever mentioned it again. He's never gotten an email from the HR manager that says, never mind, I can't do Bagel Mondays. I spoke too soon. It's not approved. Just nothing. It's never been brought up again. And this is a good story because although it doesn't matter, it's just bagels. My husband was frustrated because now he had to work all Monday morning without breakfast. And all of a sudden, he doesn't really trust her now. It's like, well, she said she was going to do bagels and she didn't. So what does that say about her? And it was interesting to see how disengaged he became after the bagels. It really did sort of irk him. And I share this story because bagels don't matter. They're really unimportant, right? And to see how much something so unimportant bothered my husband, think about when important things happen or don't happen, and how much that might bother your employees and how disengaged they might become. So if you promise that something's going to happen and it's something your employees care about and it doesn't happen, or if you promise you're going to change something and this change is important to employees and the change doesn't happen, think about how disengaged those employees will become. So, this is a really good example of even just minor things can really affect our engagement. So in terms of action items for leadership, make sure that all of your leaders, your supervisors, your managers know how to do performance management. What I mean by that is make sure they know how to coach performance, make sure they know how to set expectations, make sure they know how to hold people accountable in a positive way as opposed to micromanaging. Again, just because someone's a manager or supervisor, it doesn't mean they know how to do this. And so you've really got to do, I would guess, a lot more training on performance management than what you're doing currently. Mentor-protege programs are also a great way to build trust and leadership. So what you could do is if your lower level employees have the opportunity to have a mentor-protege relationship with someone in the C-suite or even a VP or a director, that lower level employee is going to build a solid bond with that higher level employee, and the trust will form. And this will be a good thing for those two. They will have trust in each other. But also, think about it. You have a lower level employee who's being mentored by, let's say, an executive VP, and something goes wrong in the organization, or the people in the lower level of the organization are unhappy with the leadership. Now you have a champion. This person at the lower level is going to say, hey guys, I know this didn't happen, or I know you're upset, but I know this executive VP is a great person. I love our mentor-protege relationship. Have hope. So you'll have some champions in the lower level because they have a strong bond with someone in the higher level. I mean, that's an amazing outcome of mentor-protege programs. Not to mention that the protege is going to get to learn a lot. Another action item is to have an employee council who meets monthly with the executive team. So these action items are all about connecting the lower level employees with the higher level employees so that they can build a relationship together and they can build the organization together. So if you have a council made up of employees from all different departments, and their job is to take concerns from the lower level employees and share them with the higher level employees directly as opposed to having it go up the chain, that is extraordinarily powerful. Another idea is to have an internal blog. So you could have a company blog. It doesn't have to be out there in the world for the world to see. It could be an internal blog if you want it to be that way, where the executives can talk about what's happening with the business. Employees could post comments. Employees could post questions or concerns. They should be able to do so anonymously. And if you're thinking, heck no, I would never let my employees post something anonymously. I don't want to know what they would do. This is a terrible idea. Then you've got some communication problems and you've got some trust issues in your organization, and all the more reason to take action in some of these areas, because something's not right if you're having a kind of a backlash reaction to what I'm saying right now. Also, another thing you could do is just ask employees what they need to do their job. So, how frustrating is it if you're supposed to do something or you have some goal, but you don't have the tools to do it, or the relationships to do it, or you don't have the information to do it. So ask employees regularly, do you have what you need to be effective at your job? Another action item is to communicate often, and I think this was a little bit of an action item in another facet as well, but employees need to know what's happening in the organization. And again, a lot of people feel like, I'm in power, I'm a manager, I'm not going to share what I know. That's the wrong attitude. Be as transparent as you can possibly be. Another action item is to include leadership in onboarding a lot more than you probably are. So right now your onboarding program probably includes maybe one 20-minute meeting with your CEO, or maybe even lunch with your CEO, and that's probably about it. How is a new employee going to build a relationship or build trust and leadership if that's all they get? So your leadership needs to take new hires a lot more seriously and become a lot more involved in the onboarding program. They need to show their face a lot more in onboarding. And also, one way to, if you are a leader or a manager or supervisor, one way to build a relationship with your employees is to apologize if you make a mistake. So that's another action item. All right, so let's talk about growth. Employees need to grow. We're almost there here in getting through these. So growth is about the opportunity to learn, to feel challenged, to get coached or mentored, the opportunity to advance. So we're adults, and part of being an adult is that you have a really strong desire to grow and learn and stretch. So to share another story with you about in this area, the San Diego International Airport is actually known around San Diego for being a great place to work. They are very involved in the HR community here. Their executives are all over the place. So the airport and its high-level employees are very open and around in the San Diego community. And so I got to meet with the director of, I think it was the director of HR and culture. So he has both of those titles. Part of being HR is about culture. And so we had the opportunity to meet, and I wrote a blog about him, which was why we'd met. And we were talking about advancement opportunities at the airport. And one thing he said was, the airport has finite jobs. We can't grow. We have our airport area. We're not growing anymore. It's finite. There's only so many places for you to be promoted to, and there really isn't. That's it. There just really isn't a lot of growth opportunity or promotion opportunities. And he said what they've decided to do with that is, instead of seeing it as a hindrance, they use it as a way to grow their employees. So what they do is easily cross people from department to department to department. So if you get a job at the airport as let's say a marketing assistant, you have the opportunity to be a marketing assistant, but they'll ensure you also get to fill a bunch of other roles in the marketing department. And you can also move laterally. You might move up the chain a little bit in a different department and then move again. So really your career map at the airport isn't about going from marketing assistant to marketing person to marketing VP to director of marketing to executive VP of marketing. That's not the career mapping at the airport. The career mapping is to go from department to department to department and learn all of these different things. And what he said about this program was that when people come here to work, we know they're going to leave because there's going to be a time where they can't grow anymore. And so they celebrate that, and they say, well, they're here, they're going to give us their all, and we're going to take everything we can from them. We're going to learn everything we can from them. They're going to learn everything they can from us, and then they're going to leave, and they're going to go out to the community more prepared, better educated, and they can go do whatever they want now that they've had all of these experiences. So I just thought that was a really great conversation and an example of even if you're thinking, well, we don't have any VP level positions open, that's okay. People don't have to go up to grow. So some growth ideas. One is to create a lunch and learn schedule for each department. So this is one of my favorite tips. So you could say, hey, customer service department, we're going to do a lunch and learn, and you're going to train the rest of the company on how to offer internal customer service. So teach us how to do customer service well for each other here inside the organization. And then the following month, hey, accounting department, we're going to have you do a lunch and learn on how to manage your personal finances, or maybe a class on how to create a budget for yourself personally in your personal life, or or in Excel, or how to create a budget for a project here at the company. So charge each department with offering a training to the rest of the company. It's free. It's cheap. The department gets to do a little team building while they're creating the training. Tell them that one of the criteria is that it has to be fun and a little bit crazy. So you don't want it to be an hour of PowerPoint slides. It has to be a game, or it has to include a role play or something. Require that they make it fun, and then it's fun. It's a fun way to learn. Another thing you could do is create a book club. So, books these days, there's thousands of books on Amazon for $1 or $8 or $5. So people can join a book club, and it could be stuff related to your workplace, or to being in business, or to resilience, or personal or professional growth, so that people have the opportunity to learn together. That's another cheap idea. Provide the opportunity for stretch goals. We've talked about those, so that's another activity here in growth. You could partner with a nonprofit. So, well, just a personal example, I was the president of ATD, the Association for Talent Development here in San Diego, and I managed a $300,000 budget. And I've never done that in my life before. I don't have a $300,000 budget in my own company. So I got to learn something that I didn't know anything about. And so you can kind of create those experiences for your employees, figure out ways for them to go out, partner in the community in order to gain experience and grow in a way that helps your organization. Another idea for growth is to charge your department with a goal that's a little outrageous and support them as they meet it. So think of kind of a crazy idea, or have them think of a crazy idea, and then really make it fun and engaging and exciting. And then if they do achieve that goal, reward them, throw a party or have a pizza lunch or something. Definitely you have to offer a budget for professional association membership and to attend trainings. Everybody needs that personal growth and professional growth. Definitely offering a budget for personal courses too. So for example, you could offer a budget for people to take yoga classes, or things like that, things out there in the community that people might be interested in. You could locate free webinars for your employees. They're everywhere. There are free webinars everywhere. You're on one right now, so it doesn't have to cost anything, right? And then finally, the last action item here is to organize matrix teams for problem solving. So one thing you could do, a matrix team is one person from each department. So you could have one person from customer service, one person from accounting, one person from marketing, one person from wherever, and everybody gets together. So one person from each department gets together and they share the problems that they face in their own departments, and then the other people in the room can help them solve it. So it's just a great way to get people talking. It helps them understand what problems other departments are facing. It gives them a chance to build teams and build relationships with people they might not normally build a relationship with. So matrix teams, I'm a huge fan. Love this idea. One of my favorite tips as well. All right, so finally, let's talk about rewards. This is my last facet. So rewards are about, compensation, being rewarded for our performance, being recognized for things that we're doing. And so let's talk about action items. Actually, I don't have a story for you on that one. So some action items are asking employees how they want to be rewarded. So just because one person likes pizza lunches or a Starbucks card, it doesn't mean everybody wants that. I would rather get to take a couple hours off of work than get, a gift card for something. So ask your employees what would make you feel rewarded. Another action item is make sure that your connection between performance and rewards is crystal clear. So if somebody is getting a reward for something they've accomplished, make sure that whatever they've accomplished is absolutely measurable and that it really can be tied to that reward. So people should be feeling like this reward is 100% attached to this thing that I did. So they need to be crystal clear whatever people are being rewarded for. You could use an example of employee work to highlight excellence. So let's say one of your employees creates some amazing PowerPoint. Maybe they're from the marketing department and they created a cool PowerPoint presentation to put on SlideShare. Then use that, show people what they did. Say, hey, John and the marketing department created an amazing PowerPoint slide. It really emulates the culture and what we're trying to accomplish here and the message we're trying to put out there in the world. And so now John gets to be acknowledged and everybody else gets to see what excellence looks like. So show off your employees' work. You could provide advancement. That's certainly one action item. So in some way or another, and again, even if you can't necessarily say we have a lot of room for people to go up or get promoted, you can provide advancement in other ways. So you could say to the receptionist as a way for the receptionist to advance. Maybe the receptionist could take on some of the HR duties and start moving in that direction. So even if you don't have an HR generalist position for them to be promoted into, they can still advance or feel like they're advancing by giving them more work or more challenging work or giving them tasks that are harder to do or more important to the organization. And that's a way to provide advancement even if you don't necessarily have positions available to advance to. Another idea, create a wall of great ideas. So you could, Qualcomm is an example of that. Qualcomm has every single patent they've ever achieved on the wall in the in the reception area. Now they have a giant reception area because it's a gazillion-dollar company, but every single patent is acknowledged on this wall. So you could do something like that, and you don't have to spend money on plaques. You know, you could even just print up a little certificate, and you can buy 50-cent frames. You know, it doesn't have to be expensive to create a wall of great ideas, and they don't have to be patents, or, you know, they could be just, you know, internal ideas that made a difference in the way the organization functions. Another action item is to increase recognition by inviting employees to executive meetings. So what I mean by that is, if your executive team meets, you know, once a month, and you've got a few really stellar employees that accomplish something great, let them come to the executive meeting for 15 minutes just to be seen by the executive team. Show them off. And, you know, this works particularly if you're in a larger organization where there's a real disconnect or not a lot of connection between executives and lower level employees. This is a way for a lower level employee to feel like, wow, the leadership cares about me and what I did. They wanted to meet me. You know, so it's a way to make a real connection and also increase recognition. You could use your social media. So if your company has Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff, why not acknowledge employees there on social media and say, hey, we've got a great employee, they had a great idea, and we just wanted to put it out there. And here's a fun one. Take out an ad in your newspaper to celebrate it, or in your business journal. So those are the 7 facets of employee engagement, and I've given you 57 action items, most of which you can implement without your CEO's approval and without a budget. And again, I offer them to you in that context because I just see so often HR feels so defeated because they have these great ideas to build an amazing workforce and a great workplace, and the CEO is just not on board with that kind of strategic thinking. They're focused more on the dollars and cents and the bottom line. So that's why I put it in that context, that you can implement a lot of these without necessarily needing to have an entire engagement strategic plan. That said, I still encourage you to have a strategic plan if possible. Obviously, having a plan and being able to measure success and having, you know, key performance indicators and all of that stuff, those are important. If you can attach your strategic planning for your employee engagement program to the organization's vision and, you know, what they're trying to achieve, this is all much better than doing these sort of ad hoc action items that I offered. A good place for you to start with a strategic plan is to really maybe take a look at those 7 facets and just kind of say, what are 3 action items I can do within each facet? If you downloaded the workbook, then hopefully you've been filling that in as we've been going along, kind of choosing your favorite 3 from each section and writing those in so that you have an action item. I'm just curious, what were some of your favorite action items that you saw, or what's something that you're going to implement now that this webinar is over? I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the things you feel like you can definitely take hold of and go and do? I see some people typing. What are you thinking? What are some things that you can do? Okay, Nanette says she really liked the idea of the lunch and learn. Yeah, it's fun. You know, you don't have to be a formal trainer to do a lunch and learn. I think the teams or the departments will have a lot of fun creating those, especially if you make that one of the requirements, that it has to be fun and creative. Let's see, what else? What else sparked your interest? Looks like people are thinking and typing. Refer back to your notes there. I like the idea of sharing company history during the onboarding and ensuring each person understands how their role plays an essential part of the company's history. Yeah, that's so important, Candace. Absolutely. People have to understand what role they play in the grand scheme of things in order to be engaged. Otherwise, it's just a job. Jill says she really likes the idea of leaving at 5 on Fridays. I know, Jill, you're from a company where people are really working hard, so that would be great. Or maybe you can convince the CEO to bring in dinner for those of you that are staying late. I like that one. I thought of you actually, Jill, when I was writing that on my PowerPoint slide. I thought of your organization. Wanda says, ask employees what they need to do their jobs more effectively. That's awesome. Nanette also says, oh, she's got a question. What will be the best approach to train managers on coaching and giving feedback? Nanette, so that's one that would require a little bit more planning than some of these others that I was sort of passing off as easy to implement. There are plenty of coaching and giving feedback trainings out there. I actually, in my email newsletters that I send out, I've sent out a couple on how to set expectations. So Nanette, if you email me, and my contact information will be pulled up here in a minute, if you email me, I will definitely send you the setting expectations form that I have. I also have a kind of a script to follow for giving feedback. So those could be easy for you to take. Obviously, I also do training programs on how to give feedback and how to do coaching. So if that's something you want to explore, we can talk about that as well. So shoot me an email, Nanette, and we can talk more about that offline. Jennifer says that she liked the one where they could do a meeting at a local coffee house. Yeah, I like that one too. I actually worked for a startup company that was in a building that had a restaurant right next to it. So when you came out of our front door of our office, there was this restaurant right to the left of you. And so my boss would give us I think it was just $10 gift certificates. He gave them to us once a week, so that was kind of a lot. But yeah, so we actually sort of extended into the restaurant and sort of used it as part of our office. And then it was fun because everybody who worked there knew us because we were in there every day, and it just kind of became a nice synergy. Jill says one thing she liked too was encouraging management to be more transparent. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So just real quick, we're out of time here, almost out of time. I just wanted to kind of make a case here for you about employee engagement, and maybe you can take some of this all back to your managers if you do feel like you want to create a more strategic plan around employee engagement instead of doing it a little more ad hoc, which is what I've been offering here in my presentation. You know, there's so much research that connects employee engagement to the bottom line, and that's what your CEO thinks about, is the bottom line. And that's, you know, there's all this conversation in HR about how HR can get a seat at the table, and part of the problem is that HR is coming from a place of people. You know, HR is talking about employee engagement. We want our employees to feel a profound connection to our work. And the CEO is going, no, I want my employees to earn X amount of dollars, you know. So there's kind of a disconnect in what HR is thinking and talking about and what the CEO is thinking and talking about. So if you can connect engagement to the dollars and cents for your CEO, you'll get a little bit more excitement from the CEO about focusing on employee engagement. I mean, so there is just literally thousands of research articles on employee engagement. Now, I'm going to send this to you, so don't feel like you have to frantically write it down. I'm going to send this and the next slide to you so that you have a little PDF or a little one sheet that you can bring into your conversation if you wanted to have a conversation with your CEO about this. And of course, I have to talk about incivility and bullying as an opposite of engagement because that's how I see the world. So you'll get both sides of this. You'll get the stats on engagement and the stats on incivility and bullying. And you can just see, you know, going back to the engagement one, companies with strong employer brand enjoy 50% higher cost per hire savings. So if you have a strong brand, everyone knows your organization is a great place to work, then people stay. There's no turnover, or there's a lot less turnover, and so you're saving money. That's connected to the bottom line. Engaged employees are twice as productive. They increase customer satisfaction by 80%. You know, these are things that you can connect to the bottom line. Versus bullying and incivility. Bullied employees take 10 more sick days per year. 13 billion is lost annually due to workplace bullying. Managers and executives spend the equivalent of 7 weeks per year dealing with incivility. So you can connect this stuff to the bottom line, and I would definitely urge you to do that if you wanted to focus on creating a more specific strategic sort of employee engagement program. I also wanted to mention millennials. So whether we like it or not, millennials are in our workplace, and the younger generations are only going to continue to join our workplace. And the older workforce, those of us who feel like you should only get rewarded for hard work, and that you got to respect authority and all of this stuff, that's just not how the younger generation thinks. They just don't think that way. And whether you think it's wrong or right is really irrelevant. That's just not how they think. So millennials are requiring engagement or they will leave. So with millennials and the younger generations, I think we're on to Gen Z now, we're calling them, they require engagement or they'll leave. So engagement's no longer an option. People aren't going to stay if they're not engaged. Also, the younger generations require immediate satisfaction because they grew up with the internet, and the internet provides immediate satisfaction. And they grew up with helicopter parents, and those parents provided immediate satisfaction. So the way they've lived their life so far, they are used to immediate gratification, immediate satisfaction. So right off the bat, as soon as that new hire comes in, you've got to show that you care about their engagement and you want them to stay, and you care about how satisfied they are with the workplace. And if you don't show them that, they'll just go to another organization that can show them that. So, again, it doesn't matter if you agree with the way they think or not. They just think differently because of their experiences. Their experiences are different, and we've got to cater to that, or we're going to be spending a lot of money on turnover. Now, you might be thinking you've got a long road ahead. I've given you 57 action items. That's a lot to implement. Again, I definitely recommend the strategic plan. It's a little bit better of an avenue than to do this kind of more ad hoc, which is what I've offered. But, you've got a long way to go. Building employee engagement is a process. It's going to take time. And, so you might have shown up because you didn't know how to engage employees. Maybe you didn't really even know what that looks like. There's a lot of theoretical information out there about engaging employees, not a lot of real tangible action items. Maybe you're tired of figuring out how to get people to stop dragging your company down. Maybe you're looking around going, man, you guys work hard, but we're still feel like we're pedaling in place. Or maybe you want to do more of what you love and you want to focus less on turnover because turnover is exhausting. Or maybe deep down you know that employee engagement will make your workplace better. And when employees are engaged, they're thriving, they feel a profound connection to your work and your customers, and that feeds into their entire life. And you know that when people are thriving at work, they're thriving at home. If they're not thriving at work, they're coming home and they're kicking their dog and they're mean to their kids and they're upset at home. Just because they leave work, it doesn't mean their feelings turn off. So I feel like personally, HR has a sort of a moral obligation to create an environment where people are engaged and connected so that they can thrive and feel like they're a part of a greater good. And so, it's time to focus on this. And remember that nothing I've shared with you is theory today. I didn't make these action items up. They either come from my research, they come from personal experience and seeing them work, or from case studies from my friends and colleagues. And so if you're thinking, where do I begin? And you're thinking, this is going to take me forever, I'm going to offer you something here. So, you could do it the slow way or you could do it the fast way. And so what I'm going to offer you is just a simple gift. It's nothing too major, but it could make a world of difference for you. I'm happy to meet with you for 20 minutes and just help you get started on building a strategic plan around employee engagement. And I would do this anyway, whether you're on the webinar or not. I just wanted to put it out there that feel free to call me if you need help getting started. If you're not sure where to go from here, I've given you a lot of ideas. I'm here. I'm here to help. And I'll meet with you and we'll just chat about where you're at and what you feel like you want to accomplish. Chatting with me doesn't mean you're obligated to do anything. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. I just am pointing out that I'm here to help you if you need, and whether you want consulting from me or not, I'll give you that free 20-minute call. So all you have to do is type yes into the screen, and I will email you a link with a scheduling component to it, so you can just click on the link and schedule a call with me, and we'll chat for 20 minutes. And then if you need more help, then you need more help, and we can go from there. If not, then you don't, and that's okay too. So type yes, and let's get that 20-minute call set up, and I'm happy to help. All right, Candace says yes. Dion says yes. Linda says yes. Deborah says yes. Awesome. I'm happy to reach out to you for. Marcus says yes. Awesome. Happy to reach out to you. We've got another Deb. She says yes. We've got a yes with a couple exclamation points. That's exciting. All right, so I will be happy to email, and we'll set up a call, and I look forward to chatting with you. And you know, I'm here for any of you, even if you didn't say yes right now. If you need me later, I'm here. Please give me a call, shoot me an email, and we'll get it set up. So with that, is there any final questions about engagement? Anything else I can answer before we get off here? And there's my email address also. I think, Nanette, you were going to email me so I could send you a few documents. Any other final questions? All right, well then it looks like we're it. No more questions. Nanette says she's emailing me now. Perfect. All right, well thank you so much for spending your morning with me, or your afternoon, depending on where you're at. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Go forth, be engaged, find a profound connection with your workplace, and I look forward to chatting with some of you. So thanks so much.